My name is Jack Hudson. When my wife Kate finally came back from Asia, she stood on the porch and stared at the new deadbolt like it was a bomb waiting to go off. Her suitcase sagged on one wheel. The porch light flickered above her like it was trying to stay out of it. I stood inside, barefoot on the tile, holding Eddie's bottle in one hand and a manila envelope in the other. Court seal. Heavy paper. Words that speak in finalities. She tried her old key. The metal scraped once, then again. She cursed under her breath. Shook the handle like the door owed her something. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, pressing her face to the glass. Her eyes searched the shadows. "Jack, open the door." I didn't move. I just raised the envelope. She froze, pale. She blinked, slow, like her mind needed an extra second to process what was already obvious. "No," she whispered. "You can't lock me out of my own house." I didn't yell, didn't flinch, just said, "You left your son, Kate, for a month. You didn't think there'd be consequences?" She stepped back like I'd slapped her. A neighbor's dog barked once in the distance, then went quiet again. The baby monitor on the kitchen counter crackled with static. I could hear Eddie shifting in his crib upstairs, the soft thud of his heel against the mattress. I wondered if he knew she was home, if something deep in his body recognized the footsteps on the porch, or if 30 days was enough to forget her entirely. Most people think the story ends here, that it's about revenge or court orders or frozen locks, that the climax was her key failing to turn and the man she left deciding not to let her back in. But the story didn't end here. Started 31 days earlier, at Austin Bergstrom Airport, with a wave I've seen in my nightmares ever since. She had packed for weeks, measuring outfits, cross-checking voltage converters, talking in circles about time to breathe, and finally visiting the places I missed. I kept thinking she'd change her mind, kept waiting for her to remember what she was walking away from, but she never did. That morning, I loaded her suitcase into the truck and buckled Eddie into his seat. He had one sock off. I remember that. He always pulled it off in the car. She didn't notice. We pulled up to Departures. The curb was slick with fuel and sunlight. She hopped out fast, like the truck was on fire. She reached into the back seat, kissed Eddie once on the forehead. Too quick, more of a tap than anything, and whispered, "Be good for Daddy." Then she looked at me, flat-eyed and calm. "It's just a vacation, Jack. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I wanted to say, "This isn't a honeymoon. We have a son, 1 year old. Still calls every object, duh." But I didn't say anything. Just gripped the wheel and waited for her to disappear behind the security line. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A photo. Rooftop cafe. Bright lights. Glass of wine. Caption. "Finally breathing." That's when I knew. She wasn't suffocating. Not really. Not from the house, not from Eddie, not from me. She was suffocating from commitment. From gravity. From being needed by something that couldn't pour her a drink or ask about her day. She wanted 30 days to pretend none of it had happened. No diapers. Number 3 a.m. Cries. No slow slide from romance to routine. And if she wanted that kind of freedom, then I was done pretending we were still a family. The cracks had been showing long before that plane ticket. I see that now. Back then I called them rough patches. I called them adjustments. I blamed the baby, the stress, the sleep deprivation, anything but the obvious truth. Kate was never built for permanence. Not the real kind. Not the kind that bleeds. She used to say she liked motion, travel, change, reinvention. She had half a novel on her hard drive and a Pinterest board called Escape Plans. I thought it was harmless. Everyone dreams of escape when the dishes pile up and your body aches in places it didn't 10 years ago. But she meant it. The night she told me about Soul, she called it a creative retreat. Said it like it was a doctor's prescription. Like the only cure for her fading identity was boarding a plane and pretending her son didn't exist for 30 days. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, bills spread like battlefield debris across the surface. "You're going where?" I asked. "Seoul. Just for a month." I already talked to Mom. She thinks it's a great idea. Her mother, the ever-present Echo. Mary had always treated me like I was the wrong man. Like she had seen the ending from the start and was just waiting for the credits to roll. And Eddie? I asked. You're okay leaving him? She flinched. That was the only honest reaction I got. I need to do something for me, Jack. Just this once. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't crying. Wasn't breaking down. She was resolute. Like this had already happened in her head and I was just now being informed. I run the business, I said. I'm working 6 days a week. How am I supposed to? You'll figure it out, she said. You always do. And then she walked away. That sentence echoed for days. You'll figure it out. Like fatherhood was a scheduling problem. Like bonding with your infant son was just another box to check between meetings and diaper blowouts. She booked the flight 2 days later. Didn't ask. Just emailed me the itinerary. On the morning of departure, I watched her walk through the gate with perfect posture and zero hesitation. Like she was being called somewhere. Like the house she was leaving, with its spit-up stains and white noise machines, had never really felt like home. And suddenly I wasn't angry. I was afraid. Not of being alone. Not of raising Eddie without her. I was afraid I had spent the last 12 years building a life with someone who never really wanted one. She said she'd be back. That it was just a month. That I was being dramatic. But a mother doesn't leave a 1-year-old because of drama. She leaves because she wants to remember what it feels like to be untethered. She leaves because she's already left in her heart. The flight took off. I drove home. Eddie slept in the back seat, his one sock dangling off his foot like a forgotten flag. I carried him upstairs. Fed him from a bottle I didn't know how to hold right. He looked up at me with those eyes, her eyes, and didn't cry. I told myself it would be fine. That she'd be back. That families go through things. But in the weeks to come, I would stop believing that. Because sometimes when someone leaves you, they don't come back with answers. They come back to find the locks changed. Outside, Kate finally stopped shaking the door. She lowered her head and stared at the welcome mat like it betrayed her. I wondered if she remembered buying it. Or if I did. I honestly couldn't recall. 12 years of marriage and I couldn't tell you who picked the mat. She pressed her forehead to the glass. Jack, please, this isn't how we fix things. Her voice cracked on fix. I didn't move. Eddie needs me, she said. It wasn't true. Not anymore. He had learned to stop looking toward the front door when he heard footsteps. He had learned to smile when I walked in. He had learned to sleep through the night without her scent in the crib. She stared at me, not the way a wife looks at a husband, not the way a mother looks at a father, but the way someone stares at the stranger who now owns their past. I just needed time, she whispered. That's all. I thought about those rooftop photos, the brunches, the skyline selfies. I thought about the 6-hour delay between my message, Eddie has a fever, and her reply, hope you've got infant Tylenol. Love you. I thought about how she left a boy who couldn't yet speak her name. And I thought about that line she texted the night before she boarded her flight. I need to remember who I was before all of this. That's the one that stayed with me. Because here's the thing. If all of this includes your child, then who exactly are you hoping to remember? I didn't say any of that. Just held up the envelope again. Firm and still. You'll need to contact your attorney, I said. Then I turned and walked away. The baby monitor hissed beside the coffee maker. Eddie shifted again. Then settled. The porch light flickered one more time. Then held. And for the first time in 31 days, I felt the house breathe. Not empty. Not broken. Just quiet. And real. Like a place where healing might finally start. The first 3 nights I didn't sleep. Not really. I sat in the hallway with my back against the nursery door. Legs cramping, ears trained to every breath Eddie made. The monitor hissed its static lullaby from the kitchen, but I stopped trusting it after the second night. I needed to hear him with my own ears. Needed to be close. By day 4, the apartment smelled like sour formula and damp laundry. Bottles collected by the sink like tiny glass soldiers who'd all lost the same war. The living room looked like a nursery had exploded. burp cloths on the couch, diapers in the lampstand, a half-eaten banana fossilizing on the floor. I didn't know where Kate kept the backup pacifiers. I didn't know if we had backup pacifiers. I used a teaspoon to measure Tylenol because I couldn't find the dropper. I held Eddie in the crook of my arm at 2 in the morning, his forehead hot, his whimpers soft and desperate, and I whispered promises to a boy too young to understand them. It's okay. I've got you. We're going to be okay. And for the first time in my life, I meant it without knowing if it was true. Kate had been gone 4 days. She texted once on the first day. Just landed. Exhausted but safe. Love you both. Then silence. By the end of the first week, she was posting again. A photo from a rooftop bar, neon signs in Hangul, her hair curled, cocktail in hand. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen since before the pregnancy. The caption read, "Finally found the old me, the old her." And what was I? Some skin she had shed? A placeholder keeping the baby alive while she played tourist in the country of her excuses? Eddie had a fever on day 7. Low grade but stubborn. He burned hot through 2 nights, and I called the pediatrician at 4 a.m. when his cries came hoarse, urgent, unlike any sound I'd heard from him before. The nurse told me to monitor him, push fluids, watch for rash or vomiting. I held him for hours, rocking him on my chest, whispering stories about clouds and dogs and cars because that's all I could think of. His hand clutched my shirt like an anchor. I texted Kate 3 times. Eddie has a fever. 107. I gave Tylenol. He's not sleeping. Please call me. She didn't answer for 6 hours. When she finally replied, it was just a heart emoji and, "Hope you're hanging in there. Miss you. Hanging in there." Like I was sitting through a dentist appointment, not raising our son alone. The resentment didn't come in a wave. It hardened slowly, day by day, like ice spreading from the center of something once warm. I started documenting everything, not out of spite, not yet, but because something in me knew this wasn't just a vacation, that this was a test, a reckoning. So I kept records, receipts, sleep logs, medicine dosages, every unanswered message, every missed call. I built a folder called Eddie Daily. It was just for me then, a paper trail in case she came back and tried to pretend the month hadn't happened, like it was just 4 weeks of self-care and wine. But that folder would become something else, something heavier. By week 2, I had learned his patterns. I knew which cry meant hunger and which meant fear. I could change a diaper in the dark. I knew the exact temperature to warm the bottle without burning his tongue. I stopped fumbling the car seat buckle. I stopped asking Google every 10 minutes if I was doing it wrong. There was a moment, late on a Wednesday, when Eddie fell asleep on my chest and stayed there for 2 full hours. His breath was even, his skin cool, and I realized he wasn't just tolerating me. He was trusting me. That broke me in a way nothing else had. I cried for the first time that night, not because I was overwhelmed, not because I missed Kate, but because I had never felt so needed by anyone. And not once, not even when I married her, had Kate made me feel like this, like a father. She was posting more now. Temple, a dance club, a beach. I remember one photo, a little cafe with hanging lights and wooden tables. She sat with 3 women I didn't recognize, all of them holding drinks, laughing. And in the reflection of the cafe window, barely visible, was a man, back turned, head tilted toward Kate. Not a waiter, not a passerby. He was sitting at her table. She didn't mention him. The caption said, "Good wine, good friends, good soul." I didn't text her, didn't ask. I screenshotted the image and added it to the folder. Something in me shifted then. Not rage, not betrayal, just certainty. She wasn't coming home the same, and neither was I. By week 3, I had a rhythm. Up at 6. Bottle, bath, diapers, play mat. I worked from home in short shifts during nap times. Took calls with Eddie on my lap. When he fussed, I bounced him with my foot while answering logistics emails like I wasn't holding my entire life in one hand. At the pharmacy, an older woman looked at me. Eyes red, shirt stained with formula, baby strapped to my chest, and said softly, Babies don't remember who went on vacation. They remember who showed up. I nearly broke down right there at the register. Because that was the truth. The only truth left. Kate FaceTimed me 4 days before she was supposed to come back. She was calm, hair perfect, a glass of wine in her hand. Her voice was syrupy, like she was already somewhere else in her head. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what happens when I get back, about the business." I was confused. "What do you mean?" Her mother, Mary, appeared on screen next to her. That perfect frozen smile. Always too wide. Always hiding the dagger. "You're stretched too thin, Jack," Mary said. "We think it's time for a change. My daughter's son will take over the company one day. It should stay in the family." Kate didn't interrupt. Didn't argue. She just nodded like this had been rehearsed. I said nothing. Just looked at them. 2 women plotting the erasure of a man they had leaned on for a decade. I ended the call. 2 hours later, movers arrived at our office. Not hers. Mine. They started hauling out equipment. Desks. A server I'd spent 3 years building. Staff looked panicked. One of them called me. "What's happening, Jack?" I drove to the office, walked through the front door, and calmly said, "Stop. Put everything back." Mary was there. Eyes wide. Voice raised. "You have no right." I opened my briefcase and showed her the documentation. Quiet. Legal. Irrefutable. "The business is registered in my name," I said. "All of it. Ownership. Accounts. Contracts." She sputtered. "You can't do this." "I'm not doing anything. I'm protecting my son's future." Kate called that night. I didn't answer. She tried again. And again. I let it ring. By the time her plane landed, I had already spoken to a lawyer. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and a voice like a gavel. She asked, "Were you the sole caregiver?" "Yes." "Do you have documentation?" I opened the folder, clicked through every entry. "Good," she said. "Then we'll file for temporary custody." I signed the papers without hesitation. Not out of spite, not for revenge, but because fatherhood, I had learned, wasn't a title you inherit. It's one you earn in the middle of the night when no one is watching. I opened a separate bank account, disconnected every joint card, rerouted my paycheck. I changed the locks, quietly, legally, for Eddie's stability. And the night she came back, blinking against the porch light, face pale at the sight of the deadbolt. It wasn't my anger that closed the door. It was my peace. She said, "You're kidding me. I'm his mother." And I said, "You went on vacation. I stayed and raised him." An officer arrived when she tried to call my bluff. He read the order, verified the documents, then turned to her and said, "Ma'am, if you want to change this, you'll have to go through court." Her ride pulled up. She left with her suitcase and nothing else. I bolted the door behind her. Then I walked upstairs. Eddie was asleep, mouth slightly open, one sock off again. I pulled the blanket over his leg, brushed the hair from his forehead. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't filling in for anyone anymore. The house didn't feel abandoned, felt earned, like the first home we'd ever had. The morning after she left the porch, suitcase dragging behind her, voice cracking from disbelief, I sat at the dining table, cold coffee in hand, watching the sun crawl across the tile. I had slept 2 hours, maybe less, but I felt clearer than I had in months. There was no more pretending. I opened the folder again. Not the legal one, the other one. The one labeled Eddie Daily. Inside were 31 days of timestamps, receipts, messages. Every thermometer reading. Every unanswered text. Every moment I stood alone with a sick child while his mother explored temples and tasted cocktails beside strangers. Some people say proof is power, but that's not true. Proof is protection. I called the attorney I had quietly spoken to during week 3. Her name was Carmen. She had gray eyes and a voice that made people stop talking mid-sentence. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Hudson?" "Yes." "Ready to move forward?" I looked up the stairs, toward the room where Eddie still slept, His tiny socks folded perfectly on the nightstand, like someone had finally learned to care. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." She asked for documentation. I sent it. Photos, logs, statements from Eddie's pediatrician, notes from the daycare where I'd registered him without Kate's help. Carmen read through it all, page by page, and then she said one word that hit harder than I expected. Good. Not "I'm sorry." Not "this is hard." Just good. Because sometimes, to protect what matters, you need to stop bleeding and start drawing lines. We filed for temporary emergency custody within 48 hours. Carmen handled it like a surgeon, calm, clinical, precise. She asked me hard questions. Did she leave a written agreement? No. Did she name anyone to provide care while she was away? No. Did she offer financial support during the absence? I laughed. Came out sharper than I meant. She posted sushi and skylines while I sold off tech equipment to cover our mortgage. Carmen nodded like she had heard this before. The court moved fast. Faster than I expected. Within a week, I had a stamped, sealed order in hand. Temporary sole custody, father. Exclusive use of the marital residence for child stability. The language didn't lie. It didn't stutter. It simply cut through the noise. I changed the locks again. Not out of anger. Just to make it legal. Kate tried calling. Dozens of times. I didn't answer. She switched to messages. They came in waves. "Jack, this is insane. You don't get to erase me. We're supposed to be partners. This is kidnapping. You think the court will side with you?" Then, finally, "I'll be there Friday." I didn't reply, but I made sure the order was printed and taped to the window by the door. Friday came like a slow drumbeat. I cleaned the house. Not for her, for me, for the space, for Eddie. I folded his clothes, put away every trace of Kate's presence. Her robe, her books, her half-used serum bottles that lined the bathroom like little altars to someone else's version of healing. When the knock came, it wasn't gentle. She stood there in jeans and a blazer, like someone dressed for court but hoping it wouldn't come to that. Her hair was styled, lips done, sunglasses pushed to the top of her head like a crown. "Jack, come on," she said, voice already stretched. "You made your point." I stepped forward and peeled the tape from the window, handing her the court order. She didn't take it. "You're joking." I shook my head. "You're seriously keeping me out of my own house?" "No, I'm keeping you out of his." That landed. Her jaw tightened. "I'm his mother. You were gone for 31 days. No notice, no plan, no support. I was finding myself. I didn't blink. And while you did that, I was finding out what it means to be a father." She looked past me toward the hall. "Is he awake?" "No. Let me in, Jack." "I can't. The order's clear." She stepped back like the porch had turned cold. "I'm calling the police." "You can," I said. "They'll read the order. Same as you." She did. The officer came 20 minutes later. Blue uniform, body camera blinking. Kate stood straight, calm, confident. She handed him her ID. He read the address, then looked at me. I passed him the papers. He read. He squinted. Then he stepped aside and said, "Ma'am, if you want to contest this, you'll have to go through court." Her face broke then, just for a second. Her eyes flashed something, fear, maybe, or recognition, like she'd finally realized this wasn't a spat. This was something she couldn't charm her way out of. As her ride pulled away, she didn't look back. I closed the door, slid the bolt, and for the first time in months, I stood in a house that felt honest. The next few days were quiet. Eddie laughed more, slept better. I set a routine in stone. Morning walks, naps, clean bottles, full fridge, no skipped baths, no missed checkups. Kate's text shifted. The rage cooled. A new tone emerged. "What time did he nap today? What did the pediatrician say about his rash? Do you need me to bring diapers? Size 4, right?" I answered through my attorney. Carmen said, "She's building a case. Or maybe she's finally realizing she has to." I didn't care which it was. The custody hearing came 3 weeks later. A small courtroom, pale walls, Plastic clock ticking like judgment. Kate wore gray. Her mother sat behind her, lips pressed together like a nun at a funeral. My lawyer laid out the file, the thick one, with every screenshot, every receipt, every unanswered message. Her attorney tried to paint me as controlling, said I had denied access to a willing mother, said I had overstepped. Carmen slid the file across the table. "This isn't control," she said. "It's care." The judge skimmed, looked at the timestamps, the baby's fever, the silent hours. She looked at Kate. "Did you leave the country without arranging care?" Kate didn't answer at first, then nodded. The judge looked back at the papers, then at me. "The father will retain temporary custody. Case to be reviewed in 90 days. Kate didn't argue. She just sat still. Eyes glassy. No drama. No reward. Just stability. And that was all I wanted. A week later, I took Eddie to the mall. Just the two of us. I bought him a little blue hat that made him look like a garden gnome. We sat by the play area, foam mats, plastic animals, the kind of chaos that feels safe. He wobbled from one toy to the next, falling often, laughing louder each time. He fell hard once, flat on his diapered backside. He looked at me, startled. Then he smiled, like falling was just a part of it. And I thought, this is what fatherhood is. Not being perfect, not having all the answers, just being there when they fall. I had spent years thinking presence was background noise, that sacrifice was silent, that if you loved someone enough, they'd just know. But I was wrong. Presence must be visible. Sacrifice must be chosen. And love, real love, means staying when it's easier to go. Kate didn't understand that. Maybe she never would. But Eddie did. In his small, wordless way, he did. And I would build a life around that truth. With or without her. Kate's texts came in bursts, always at night. At first, they were full of fire, blunt force sentences with no punctuation. "You don't get to do this. I gave you years. You are nothing without me." Then they softened, reshaped by advice or regret or maybe just fear. "Can we talk like adults? I want to do what's best for Eddie. Please don't shut me out." I didn't respond. Carmen did. Always brief. Always factual. We were waiting for the court review. 90 days. A thin window that revealed everything. Kate tried visiting once. Not to see Eddie. Just to hover near the mailbox. Pretend like it was hers again. I watched her from the upstairs window. She stood there for almost 5 minutes, staring at the porch like it was a tombstone. She didn't knock. The next morning, she texted, "He's still sleeping through the night? Does he ask about me?" I didn't answer. Carmen did. "He's healthy. He's on routine. We'll update before the review." That was the line we held. And each time Kate crossed it, we held it again. But then something strange happened. Her messages began to shift again. Not frantic. Not polished. Simple. "What size diapers is he in now? Did you get his shoes from daycare? I think they were too small. I know it's not my time, but can you send a photo from today, please?" And she waited. Sometimes hours. Sometimes days. She stopped posting online. No more cocktails. No more skylines. No more curated versions of the woman she wished she was. Instead, she started sending things. Quiet things. Packages. Books for toddlers. Teething biscuits. A jacket for fall. No notes. No claims. Just things a mother might send if she were trying to remember how. I didn't tell her they arrived. But I didn't return them either. The day of the review hearing, I found her already seated in the lobby. She looked different. Not just tired, smaller. Like someone had finally seen her reflection and didn't recognize what they'd become. She didn't speak when I sat down. She didn't look at me. The courtroom was colder this time. Fewer people. Fewer words. Just the facts. Carmen handed over the updated folder. New entries. A full calendar. Medical visits. Receipts. Photos. Milestones. Eddie crawling. Eddie clapping. Eddie asleep on my chest. His hand curled around my thumb like a lock that only opened inward. Kate's attorney stood, cleared his throat, and tried to make a case. She acknowledges the mistakes. She's prepared to resume shared custody. She's pursuing therapy. She's remained employed. She's demonstrated a renewed commitment. The judge held up one hand. "Miss Bennett," she said, turning to Kate, "do you admit that you left your son without preparation, support, or a caregiving plan for a period of 31 days? Kate's mouth opened, closed. She blinked fast, then nodded. "Yes." "Do you understand that your absence created instability?" "Yes." "And you agree that the father has demonstrated sole responsibility for the child's well-being?" Another nod, slower this time. Her voice cracked. "Yes." The judge paused, looked at me, then back at Kate. "I am granting joint custody," she said, voice level, "with physical custody to remain with the father, visitation to be determined through mediation." Kate didn't argue, didn't cry, just sat there, fingers trembling, eyes locked on the table like it might collapse under her guilt. Outside the courtroom, she followed me to the elevator. "Jack," she said, her voice lower now, less certain. "Thank you for taking care of him." I didn't reply. "I was lost," she said. "I thought I needed time to be myself again. I didn't know what I was losing." I turned to her, met her eyes. "I wasn't perfect either," I said, "but I stayed. That's what he'll remember." She didn't follow me into the elevator, and I didn't look back. Weeks passed. The house grew quieter. Not emptier, just steadier. Eddie and I fell into new rhythms. We ate pancakes on Sundays, visited the park every Thursday. I kept a notebook, not for legal evidence anymore, just to track his words, his steps, the things he loved. He liked ducks, the color orange, the sound of keys, the smell of apples. And me. He liked me, not because I was charming, not because I bought him things, but because I had shown up again and again, even when it would have been easier to run. Kate began her visits under supervision. 1 hour a week, a counselor present, a quiet room with too many chairs. At first, Eddie didn't recognize her. Not fully. She brought him a stuffed giraffe. He dropped it on the floor. He crawled toward me halfway through the visit, arms up, head burrowed into my shoulder. She cried afterward. I saw it from the parking lot, but she kept coming. The second visit, he touched her face. Just once. The third, he let her hold him for a minute before reaching back to me. Progress. Small. Real. She never asked to change the custody terms. Never hinted at a fight. I think she knew. She was trying to rebuild something she had demolished with her absence. And she understood now, time wasn't enough. Presence mattered. History mattered. And she didn't have either. One night, Eddie fell asleep early. I sat on the back porch, a beer in one hand, his baby monitor in the other. The breeze was light, the sky clear, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, just earned. I thought about the last year, the rupture, the rebuilding, and I realized something that froze me in place. I had become the man I once feared I couldn't be. Not a fill-in, not a shadow, not the man holding things together while someone else got to disappear. I was Eddie's father, not because Kate left, but because I stayed. I thought about forgiveness, about whether I owed it to her, about whether it was even mine to give. But forgiveness isn't a doorway, it's a fence, and only the person outside it can decide if they want to climb it or wait. Kate was waiting, and I no longer needed to open the gate. Months later, I received a card in the mail, handwritten, no return address. Just her name on the inside. "Jack, I know I failed. I know I missed the part of motherhood you can't get back. But thank you for not letting him suffer for my absence. Thank you for protecting him. Thank you for not turning him against me. One day I hope he knows that. One day I hope I earn the right to be part of his story." Kate. I folded it once. Slid it into the back of the same folder where I had once stored my fear. The documents were gone now. Only photos remained. Drawings. First steps. A life rebuilt. Not through court orders. Not through punishment. But through presence. Through the act of refusing to disappear. So now I sit here, in this house, in this quiet, and I ask myself the question that still haunts me. Was I cruel? Was I heartless to lock her out, to document her absence, to turn every silence into evidence? Or was I just finally willing to see things as they were, not as I wanted them to be? Because she left. Not just the house, not just her son. She left the role, the work, the burden. And in her absence, I learned the one truth that still steadies me. Anyone can call themselves a parent, but only one of us stayed. Tell me, would you have opened the door? Would you have let her back in?